Was there a time where you just said, screw it, I'm gonna just take this on, I don't care, we need a villain?
I just feel like I've reached the point in my career where I'm comfortable in my own skin, and there's something about it that I feed off of. There's something about it inside when I get into these incidences that just gets the best out of me on the racetrack.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go on the ball. What a race! California's Kevin Harvick does it. Straight making right there. You're the man.
Welcome to Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour, presented by NASCAR on Fox. We encourage you to follow us on YouTube or anywhere that you take in your podcast, or follow us at Harvick Happy Pod anywhere on social media. This week we have a 52-time Cup Series winner, a 3-time Daytona 500 champion in Denny Hamlin. We sat down this week and had what is definitely my best interview and favorite interview that I've done so far, whether it be here or anywhere else that we've done interviews with Fox. But Denny was very relaxed, very open, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate you taking the time to come join us.
I don't know we've ever had a...
Well, this is, as I tell everybody that I've raced against, it's a little bit awkward to sit down and actually have to interview you. So I feel like I've gotten a little bit better at it, but I'm still wearing my rookie stripes, so
okay.
don't beat me up too bad. I think the first thing I want to ask about, Joe Gibbs busted you pretty bad this week about your jeans. Was that a conscious effort to wear those jeans, or was it just, did you get dressed in the dark? What happened there?
All the above.
All the above.
All the above, for sure. I knew when I walked out of the house, I looked down, I'm like, this is not gonna fly with Joe, for sure. But I was already late, as I always am, 5 to 10 minutes late. So I just couldn't turn around and undo that turn. I had to just stay the course and
had to go with it.
Take the wrath that I knew the boss was gonna give me.
So is Joe to me seems like one of those guys that you think is always business, but he seems like he has a pretty dry sense of humor, because
he does.
He went viral on Twitter over his comment in your jeans.
I know, he likes to poke fun whenever he can, and so he did mention that, if you can't afford to buy a pair of pants, and I did remind him, though, what was right after that is that, Joe, those pair of pants cost less than a set of tires at Mavis, so it's they cost a lot, they just didn't look like they did.
Yeah, so obviously you were in there for winning, and that's whether your jeans are tore up or he likes them or doesn't, everybody's happy.
Yep.
Because you came home a winner, and so you've led all 5 races this year. You've had a great start to the season, and I know you probably wouldn't say that. You're probably a lot like I used to be. You beat yourself up over the losses more than you do the wins. Yeah. But you've led all 5 races. The Toyotas have looked pretty strong pretty much everywhere we've been, especially the last 2 weeks. What'd you think of Bristol? I mean, to me, I watched the race and I was intrigued. I was like, man, this is going to be good. We ended the race veteran first, veteran second. So what was after you've had some time to think about it, what was your opinion of the race? Obviously you won, so the opinion was pretty good.
It was. Again, it kind of landed right in my wheelhouse. So again, anything that I say about Bristol, of course, as the winner, it's going to be a little biased. But I found myself, even when I watched the race back, being wildly entertained of, like, I was even on the edge of my seat, even though I knew the result, watching that last run thinking, oh man, Denny, you're going too hard. You're gonna blow the front tires off or the rear tires off. Like, it looked like I was pushing harder than I actually was at the time. And it just was intriguing because at any time, anyone could go up and lead the race if they wanted to. But that was a strategic move on their part. If they wanted to do that, they were gonna have to reap what they sowed later on. And so it's been a long time, maybe never in the Cup Series have I been a part of a race where the driver played that huge of a role in the result of your run and then how you ended up planning the race. So it was one of the more proud victories I've had, just because I know how big of a role I had in it.
So when you look at that last run, you had a green flag pit stop in the middle of it, but take me back to the beginning of that race. When did you know that you were going to have to go into conservation mode and said, okay, everything that we planned for is not what's happening today. I need to go back to my late model days, and we're going to have to race like this. Was that you or Chris that said, hey, we probably need to do something different.
End of stage one. At the end of stage one, I was leading with 6 laps to go, and I had no indication that anything was wrong. And then all of a sudden, I went through one corner, and I think you said it great on TV. My car turned off, and I just all of a sudden couldn't make a lap. And I went from running first to finishing, I think, that stage 15th in a matter of 6 laps. And at that
Drove
point,
up in there and hit the fence.
I couldn't believe it. And I was just like, what the heck just happened? You know, we ran 40 some laps, I think. And I made a conscious effort because we saw the tire wear after the first 20 lap run, and I started to have cords. So I thought, well, I need to run out of the resin. So I ran the middle of the track the entire time while I was leading. And me and Kyle were the first ones to blow tires because we both were up the racetrack and pushing at the same time. And so from that point on, the end of stage one, I says, I'm not going to run 100% from here on out. Not unless it's a dire last lap situation.
So we're going back this week. How much further do you think you could make it? If the teams
So
and
our-
everybody go back and readjust.
Our team thought we could get 20 to 25 laps if we went back tomorrow. That's just messing with the settings. There's many settings, you know, cambers and all that things that you can adjust knowing how the pace is. Certainly we believe that we could go 65, 70 laps if we went back right now.
So you're a fan of the
I
the
mean,
tire
I
wear.
am, of course, because I think that it enters an element of racing that we haven't seen in this sport for a very long time.
So we have the tire wear that we saw at Bristol, and they have no idea why, as you know, and that's not a knock on them. It just happened, right? And I don't think that that was definitely not intentional. We've been talking about tire wear down to the cords for years, and we saw them Goodyear go on defense halfway through the race and thinking that they're on damage control, when in the end everybody is praising everything that just happened. So where do we go from here? You've addressed it, I've addressed it. We've talked about more horsepower, but I mean, if they can figure out why how they can make the tires wear like that, like we can end that conversation, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. They asked in the media center afterwards, well, would you need more horsepower if you had this tire? I said, not even close. I might have been wide open for a millisecond down each straightaway because I'm just trying to manage the car and the tires. And so, I mean, I think that's an element that is really lost in our sport and has been over time. And certainly we've been quick to overreact in situations, right? You've done many tire tests, and you know, the minute they see cords at the very end of a fuel run, they'll tighten the tire right back up and they'll make it super durable. And that has just forced us to all race in a box. And I think Chase Elliott actually explained that very well, that you know, with us not having any tire wear and us having no horsepower, it's forced us to run just the maximum line, and then running, all of us are starting to share data and we know how each other race, and we're all racing the same way now. And so that's what makes it very hard to pass. But you didn't hear any of that at Bristol. So I'm wondering, what can we do to make this better at Martinsville? Because you're going to get, again, we're racing at Michigan. I get it. We never want to see cords there, right? Because when you blow, it's going to be big. But you had enough warning at Bristol that if you ignored the warning, you blew a tire. And I ignored it the first run, but I didn't ignore it after that.
So we went through the whole race and we listened to all the comments. You go back a week before and you go to Phoenix and you're battling for the lead, and Chris comes on the radio. He's like, well, no big deal. Settle in, refocus. I heard him come on the radio at Bristol. All right, we need to do this, this, and this. How big of a part, especially last week, was the crew chief and just that information coming from him, relaying it to you? Because I hear this dynamic between the two of you guys, and I haven't really listened to a lot of people until this year, but the dynamic between you guys is so good that I don't even know how to explain it to people, because he'll ask you a question in the middle of an intense situation and he's a little bit jacked up and you're like, okay, sounds good. And there's no emotion out of you. How important is that in a situation like last week, and even a situation like you had the week before, for your confidence at Phoenix to be able to say, all right, we do need to blow that back off, to have that crew chief support you and give you all that information like he has been the last 2 weeks?
I don't think there's any secret that Chris has rejuvenated my career. I think he is just a guy that has really pushed me to get better at all types of aspects of my craft. He's also a good supporter of mine. But I think of him like the head coach. I'm the quarterback, he's the head coach. And if he tells me to This is one thing that he loves saying. He's like, what I love about Denny is that if I tell him to go and run a lap in reverse in practice, he won't ask why. He'll just go do it because he knows I have a reason I need him to do that. And so that is my job, right, is to run whatever play he tells me. And last week when I threw a pick six, trying to go for a race win he says, well, now we got to just reset and get the best day we can out of it. So, you got to have a good support system with you, and it's just something about our personalities that really meshes really, really well, and we just really respect each other, and knowing that we each have each other's best interests at heart.
So where did that start? Like, how did you guys wind up with each other?
So, I mean, it really happened after a challenging 2018. I went up my first season ever without winning a race, and that was very tough. And honestly, I was starting to doubt myself whether I was going to be able to continue to perform at a high level in the Cup Series. And then he just came in, and he was a rookie crew chief, and he says, I just want to know, are you going to be the veteran that says, I've always done it like this is how he's like, that's when things don't get done very well, right? Is if you're stuck in your ways and I have my ways that I want to do things, that could cause clashes. But I said, listen, I don't have any answers right now. I just came off a losing season, and I'm willing to listen to any constructive criticism you might have of my craft. And he says, all right, well, I think you need to get better here, there. I said, okay, I'll go to work. And that's ever since then we've had success.
Well, that's pretty intriguing because you guys went through the transition from the old car to the next gen car. And in that transition, I thought it was a rebuild of my driving style and thought process. Same?
Yes,
for you
100%.
Guys? And how much did he drive that for you and in pointing out the things that you needed to do different in how you drove? Because when I went to the next gen car, it was constantly, hey, you need to drive it different. And that was a pretty big reboot. But
hard.
You guys have been successful at it.
It's hard to do. I've been racing like you in the Cup Series for 15 years and 20 years at the time, and it's like, well, this has been successful. Well, we don't have this anymore. Things have changed, cars have changed, horsepower's changed, tires have changed, and you have to continue to evolve as a driver. And so I think that's when you really see success is while I may not have the outright speed of some of these young guys, and I know I don't. I know I don't have the talent or the outright speed. If you can mesh experience with an older driver that's willing to continue to learn, if you can have those two together, that's when you really see a lot of success.
So what was the biggest thing you had to change from the old car to the new car, from your driving style?
Man, I mean, the biggest thing is I've always been a person that uses both pedals at the same time. I've always been a very active foot person. You've seen my traces. I bounce the throttle all over the place.
It's like a heartbeat.
Yeah, all over the place, right? And just trying to smooth that out a little bit. These cars, with having so much drag, so little horsepower, getting off the brake pedal, that is something I've always had. The brake pedal is a little comfort pedal for me to I'm always just barely on that thing, just trying to roll as much speed as I can, but just really changing my style to be more momentum based.
So you transfer with Chris to the next gen car. You guys have had some opportunities to win the championship. You go to Phoenix this year, and one of the first things that stuck out to me right out of your mouth was, we're here to figure out what we need to do to get better at this particular racetrack. You guys, as a company, went there and dominated. When did that process start of trying to get Phoenix where it needed to be? Because, I mean, you guys are capable of winning the championship, and things just haven't lined up. But when you go to Phoenix this year, it sure looks like if you guys can get back there, it might be a battle between, if you got two of you, it might be a battle between those Toyotas and Gibbs cars.
I sure hope so.
When did you guys decide to reboot and say, hey, we need to go to work on Phoenix? And why did it not, where did you say we're not good enough? It's
interesting that is just the weakest track for me. And I really haven't had a lot of answers over the last 5 years now 2019 we went there, we dominated, and we punched our ticket to the Final Four that was in Miami then at the time. So that was the last time I thought we were really good at Phoenix. And when you look at statistics and you break it down and you say, okay, it's a new season. Where do I need to get better this year? There's always one track that stuck out, that average running position, speed, I was just slower. I was a 6th to 8th place guy, and I have been for the last 3 years at Phoenix. And so if that's where they're going to pave the way towards a championship, you better get better there. Now, I know you got to get there, but I've been to Phoenix so many years and just known I don't have the speed, or the car doesn't have the speed. We just haven't had the it factor in that one particular race. So we really wanted to put an emphasis this year on, let's take this spring race is really a learning opportunity to get better here, to give us some confidence that when I come back here and I'm racing for a championship, that I'm going to have a shot.
Right place for the championship race?
You could argue one track or another. It's hard to argue the results that the fans have showed us, and that is that they turn out at that racetrack time and time again. For putting on the best race, no, probably not. I think there's many other tracks that do that. We're always going to be limited because of weather. We're always going to be limited because of who owns the track, who owns the date. So that cuts half the tracks out, right? So there's a lot of red tape that will always indicate where that championship race will be. But I think we're going to do it one more time, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Maybe go somewhere different.
Yeah.
About the time you figure it out.
Exactly.
Because I felt like you guys always had Homestead figured out to a certain degree.
I had to venture. I'd say we might go back there one day.
Yeah. Well, it'd be nice to see. I'd like to see it rotate. I'd like
Absolutely.
To see even if it was 2 tracks and it just rotated every other year.
I'm a fan of a championship round, personally. I'm more of a person that I think one race is just too small of a sample size. I know that that's the way it is, and that's how they crown champions now. But if we have round of 16, round of 8, round of 4, why don't you have a round of championship? You break it down. A mile and a half, you can have, I don't care, you put a road course, mile and a half, short track, whatever you want to do. But I think that the larger the sample size, the better the results are going to be for the true champ.
I would agree with you on that. I think the point system definitely needs to be looked at from the amount of races that we have, and I don't think that the TV ratings haven't moved like it was for this championship race.
You're exactly right, and I think that if anything, I think there's more. You have 3 championship races. No one will pull away and win it after the second race. All races will be relevant. I think you would have a heck of a battle, and you're really going to test those final 4 drivers at each type of different skill set.
What's the year that you look back on and you say, man, that one got away from us? Championship.
I mean, 2010's the easiest answer. 2019, I thought, was one where I was chasing down Kyle Busch. We were running 1-2, and that's where we put the big ass piece of tape on the car.
Yeah.
Chris, in his first year as crew chief, got a little ambitious, and we ended up overheating the engine on the last run of the day, and I had to come in. But I felt like so much at peace with it because I knew I did everything that I could do on that given day. Now, 2020, I think we went, 2020, 2021, went back to the Final Four again. I mean, Joe Gibbs and my mom were on a flight out to Phoenix saying, we don't have a shot. Our cars aren't fast enough. Not at this type of racetrack. It's just every year that I've had a shot since 2010 and 2019, I feel like I've done everything I was capable of doing, but it just hasn't worked out, right? Yeah. And so that's been very frustrating, but it also, I've had some damn good years too. So I wouldn't throw away a 8-win season and not win a championship and win 2 races in a championship. I value them a little differently than most. But, I just feel like I've had some opportunities for sure. I definitely was very nervous in 2010, racing against Jimmy. I felt like I really had our foot on his throat in Phoenix, and we had a fuel situation. Would have made us just have to start our car at Homestead that year, but it just things didn't work out. But I'm at peace with whatever happens. But trust me, I'm working hard every day to continue to get better at every track, so I can just keep giving myself opportunities.
Well, I think I'm going to give you some props here because I don't think people give you the credit that you deserved for your knowledge of the sport, the amount of work that you put into your craft and what you do. And I think when we get a lot of questions and you get a lot of publicity about wearing a black hat and people not liking you and this and that. But the thing to me that is the most overlooked thing about you and Chris right now is the work ethic and time that goes into this. You started 2311, you have a lot of things going on, but it seems like you can juggle all these balls and be able to perform in the car. It's inevitable that when you plug yourself into the car, there's not going to be any distractions, and that's tough to do.
You got to have a good tackle box, as my friend Greg Fernelli would say. You got to have a good tackle box where you can, hey, the race team's over here, you're a driver over here, you're a dad over here, and be able to just separate them at the right time. And I feel like that's something I have been good at over the last 10 years or so. And yeah, when I've never gotten into a race car on a race day or a practice and not felt prepared. I always make sure I give myself enough time to fully prepare myself to do my job at 100%.
Let's talk about this black hat situation. Not the one you have on
I
today.
got one on.
Yeah, not the one you have on today. Was there a time where you just said, screw it, I'm gonna just take this on, I don't care, we need a villain. And when I came to Rodney and SHR, it was like, hey, we don't need any of this anymore, because I don't think he wanted to answer the questions. I think, I think the personality of your crew chief might be a little different. But tell me when this black hat theory started, and you're like, I'm just going to wear it, I'm going to own it.
I think, it started kind of around the Chastain time, right? And then it really took off after I did or did not get into Kyle Larson at Pocono for a race win. I think that you get into enough incidences with people, and people will start to say, well, there's one common denominator, and I acknowledge that, right? I think if I had to sit down and hash it out with everyone I've had issues with, that the line would be really long here. So, but I just feel like I've reached the point in my career where I'm comfortable in my own skin. My sponsors let me be myself. That's a really important one. Joe lets me be myself. I mean, he's had to deal with some very tough characters in his lifetime, but I feel like I definitely don't let it compromise my race team. And there's something about it that I feed off of. There's the trash talking back and forth. It's the who are you to talk? You've never done this. You're not good enough for that. Oh, really? I'll show you. Then I'll go out and win the next race. So right. There's something about it inside that self-motivates when I get into these incidences that just gets the best out of me on the racetrack.
Yeah, and for anybody who hasn't done that, there's almost a sense of that eggs you on to do it again. And I think some of that, you were telling me before the show that sometimes you'll go home because you can't sleep and you'll just do your podcast in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And when I hear that, I'm like, my God, how do you not shut your brain off and you go on and start talking? So you've taken that black hat and you've also owned it with your podcast and the things that you say and do. And has there been any of those moments where you've been like, maybe I should sleep on this podcast until the next day to just make sure I don't say what I said?
There's been moments for sure. Absolutely.
Did some of those come at midnight when you were filming when we were filming the episode?
Sometimes, yeah. I usually do it after the race, probably 20-30% of the time, as long as I get home at a reasonable time on Sunday. But yeah, I think that, of course, if I have more time to sleep on it, I'll have more facts. I'll calm down from whatever heightened emotion I might have. But that's no fun. Yeah. so I might as well just feed into the excitement or the frenzy that's going on right in the moment and give my immediate knee-jerk reaction that's probably wrong. So I always say my show is an opinion-based show. It is not factual by any means, but it's from how I see things from my lens.
Well, it's very entertaining. And I think the other thing that was really entertaining for myself and the fans was the Netflix series, and you opened up to everything. Was that when you were asked to do that, were you like, hey, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna open it up, or was it them trying to get you to open up? Because we saw every aspect of your life, that circle of life that you talked about, family, Joe Gibbs, 2311, good times, bad times, whatever it was, we saw it in there. Was that your choice?
It was. A lot of it came from initial meetings I had with NASCAR and Netflix. I understood how big of a deal this was for our sport. And so I consider it an obligation to give back to the sport. Now I'm doing it in several different ways, whether it be through content with the podcast or owning a race team. I've invested back into the sport heavily. And so I want to see it succeed. And so my rule of thumb for Netflix when they decided to follow me is that the answer is always yes until I say no. So they followed as long as they wanted to. And I'm actually, although it was largely, kind of in my world, there was tons of things that never even made it on camera that they followed us through. And so I thought they portrayed me accurately. I thought the other drivers who I saw thought, I thought that they were portrayed how I would see them as well. So I thought they did a really good job of kind of entertaining our current race fan, along with educating people about how NASCAR works. And so I just wanted to be a big part of it to give an insider's perspective of someone that drives, that owns a team, about what this sport is about. And hopefully, it ended up a net positive for our sport and myself.
Who's the one guy out there when you watch the show or look around and you're like, would you just open up and just do what you did that would be compelling to watch?
I think there's a lot of really good personalities.
You got to pick one.
I know.
Who's the one? Who's the one that you just wish that would open up? I would pick Chase Elliott.
I would. Chase Elliott is a very important person in our sport. I think he knows it, but I don't think he understands how big his influence is on our sport. Yeah. I think that, when I hear him speak on Dale Jr.'s podcast about, listen, I just want to be the best race car driver I can be, that is understandable. And that is someone that is focused on their career and doing the best they can for their team.
But there's a show to it. There's a sense of entertainment that has to go with this for us to have these personalities.
There is, and on top of that, there's also, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, there's also somewhat of an obligation to help grow the sport. Mm-hmm. Now, the sport has to do its own due diligence on, promoting it. That's a whole nother subject. But the drivers themselves have to be accessible to get to understand the personalities, because we love watching sports because of the superstars. They can do things that we cannot do. I love watching the NBA because they can do athletic things that I never could dream of, right? That's what interests me, right? We want to show people how great Chase Elliott is at his craft, but you got to get a little bit of the insight of what makes him great to really, for people to know it and understand it.
Yeah. So you have all this, you have the race teams, you have the driving piece of it, you have podcasts, you've done Netflix. How do you balance it with your family, and how is your balance in your circle of life different than it was 5 years ago to be in this spot? Because it's a noticeable change, for me looking inside to you.
Yeah, I've just prioritized different things. I make sure that, this year in particular, I'm trying to peel a little bit more me time into the week. It used to be, kind of last year, I got 1 day off. I gave myself 1 day off, and that was Friday. And that was the only day where I didn't have meetings, scheduled meetings or workouts or just something going on. Even then, I'm still doing emails, but I need more me time. And what I do with that me time, it could be more time for the kids. It could be more time for my fiance. It could be a lot of different things. But I've realized that gathering all these things throughout my career, all these accomplishments, all these trophies is all great, but you got to have someone to share it with, right? And I feel like, I've got my family in a really, really good place now. Jordan's been a great supporter of mine, to let me focus on my career, helping me out with the kids when I need it, but also being that great support group when I need the support the most on those tough days that you saw on Netflix. Oh, yeah. All that matters. Being close with my family, right? I think that it was very hard for me to watch because I knew how much a championship or winning races or what it means to my parents. But when you kind of hear my dad talk, that was really hard for me to watch, because I knew that, like, all I want him to do, I want to accomplish this goal for them, not necessarily for myself, for my friends, for my family. I want to accomplish whatever I do from here on out for the others, not for myself, for Joe Gibbs, for my team. I'm happy for myself and what I've been able to do. Anything I do from here on out is about everyone else.
It's funny because I felt like the last 5, 6, 7 years of my career, I got more joy out of getting out of the car and winning races, and when we were successful, seeing them happy, because it didn't really matter to me anymore as far as that feeling. I was happy that we won, but I was, same thing, happy for them. And you mentioned Joe Gibbs. Obviously, he put you in the car early in your career. You had success. You've been through a lot of ups and downs. What's your relationship now with Joe Gibbs? Now that you have the team, where would you say that relationship is? We saw him cracking on you over your jeans, so obviously it's still pretty.
It's
pretty
good. No, it's good. I mean, I've kind of taken Ty under my wing. I'd say that as a mentor, I'm probably more of a mentor to Ty than any of the other Gibbs drivers. We travel together. We do a lot of talking. He's obviously a young up-and-coming
You and Joe
driver.
traveled together, or Ty?
Me and Ty traveled together. Gotcha. But I know it's very important for Joe is Ty's success, and I think that he really leans on me to be that kind of adult figure for Ty here at this racetrack. Obviously, that family's gone through some tough times over the years, and so that's something I definitely take very seriously, is that this is a kid that's going to be in the sport for a very long time. He's going to lead the legacy of Joe Gibbs Racing as a driver for many, many years. What can I do to help him? And knowing that one day when I turn in the keys, my team will be competing against him. It's my job to give back to the Gibbs family, because they've been so good to me over the course of my career. They're the ones that took a chance on me. I mean, I had nothing when I came in and signed with Joe Gibbs Racing. They believed in me and my ability, and they stuck it out with me when things weren't all that great at times. So it's a family. I always thought that, while my dad never really traveled that much anymore, Gibbs was my at-track family. And if I can be that for Ty and any of the other Gibbs families, then that'd be great.
What's the best advice he's ever given you?
Well, the best advice he ever said was, "Don't be a team owner." He tried to talk me into that for sure, and say that you're making a huge mistake, which I agree with him. But I'll say that he leads by example, and when I say that, it's Monday morning at 8:30. Drive by Joe Gibbs Racing, and you'll see Joe's car sitting in the parking lot. He shows his work ethic through example, and he's there saying, what can we do? Say you didn't win this weekend. He goes to all the cars that lose before he goes to victory lane for the ones that win. He meets with every driver and says, what do you need? What can I do to help you be better? And I appreciate that you've got an owner that is that present, that invested. And so I want to model myself as a team owner after Joe Gibbs, because you don't find someone that is in the Hall of Fame in multiple sports very often.
Obviously,
and he obviously does it because he gets the best out of his people, and that's something I really, really admire.
What's the maddest he's ever been at you?
Oh, man. I mean, there's been a lot of times he's been really ticked off at me. The lip starts quivering, but I'm trying to remember one in particular, but I know that we have had some knockdown dragouts over some pit crew stuff at times, where in that room of the competition meeting, I'll get pretty critical, and he knows how hard there's working, because he's out there during pit stop practice watching them, and he's sticking up for his guys, right? And so there's been times he's taken exception to me and some comments I've made.
Any knockdown dragouts with Kyle Busch in the competition meeting? What's the best one with you and Kyle? When I look at Kyle, if I was on the same team, I just envision myself just going nose to nose with Kyle at some point in the competition meeting.
I think Kyle and Carl almost did one time.
Really?
Matt Kenseth probably can tell that story a little better.
Yeah.
But I never really had a lot of confrontation. I did have a few moments. I mean, there was the All-Star race at Charlotte where he thought that I air blocked him into the wall. I don't know. I was in the lead. I don't know how that happened. But and then there was other at Atlanta where we were kind of racing each other a little silly at times during the race where there was a difference of opinion. But, you know, my respect for Kyle is pretty high. Yeah. I really have a ton of respect for Kyle. And I almost envision kind of our relationship very similar to mine and Tony Stewart's, where we actually became better friends when we were not teammates. I think when we were teammates, it was too much of competition. Yeah. You know, I'll never forget the very first test that Kyle came over when we were at Atlanta. We kept one-upping each other. Every time we would go out, we'd keep making each other go faster. And Kyle was like, yeah, I really wanted to set the barometer of like, let you know that I'm the man here now. And I'm like, oh, really? So it was always a friendly competition, but also a fierce competition between us. But I just respect the hell out of his talent. He's such a gifted driver, and he always gets the best out of any equipment he's ever been in.
Yeah. You see, as you go, I mean, I'm not going to pin you down on what year you're going to retire, but do you see your career ending at Joe Gibbs Racing as a driver?
I see my full-time career ending at Joe Gibbs Racing. I don't know whether I'll just shut the switch off or I'll just do some one-offs here and there. The only problem I have is my competitiveness. And there's no way I can go to a track knowing I can't win. If I know that I can't win, there's no way I'll do it. I have too much pride to do that. So I don't know when the switch will go off, and the switch of competition where I'm just not as fast as I need to be, or my craft isn't as good as it needs to be. It's coming. I don't know when it will come. I think I'm still very, very high up on the level of skill set for my age, but I know that eventually the reaction's just going to slow down just enough to take me out of competition. And when that happens, I'm going to just stop immediately. And I don't know when that is. I mean, you were able to make it go till, mid to late 40s, so I'd love for it to go that long, but I have my doubts.
Yeah. I think the intriguing part for me on that question is it was always fun to drive my own cars. But the thing that I learned quickly was I never thought my cars were as competitive when I wasn't driving for RCR. And I think that would be, do you think your cars would be as competitive if you weren't driving at Joe Gibbs Racing? How long do you think it will take to keep your cars competitive enough without you driving? Because that was always the balance for me. When I owned the teams, I always thought every time I kind of just stepped away a little bit, it's like we fell off. And so I think it's an intriguing balance as to when your team will actually be ready for you to be on the other side of the fence not driving.
I think it would take a few years because you got to have a pit crew too. I mean, the pit crew is such a big part of the results nowadays. The only advantage to that now, though, is that the cars are so similar. And so I'm very confident in the speed of the cars. The 2311 is just as fast as Joe Gibbs Racing is. But there's so many other elements that play into the result that would take a few years to get. I mean, you got to have the right person on the top of the pit box. You got to have the right engineers. You'd have to put that team together, and it certainly would take a few years. So that's there's a few hesitations I have. One is that I want to end my career with Joe Gibbs Racing because I want to be loyal to the person that gave me my start. But yes, there is a part of me that wants to drive for 2311. Absolutely. I think without doubt, I'll say that I'll certainly be racing at 2311 in at least a race at some point in my career.
That'd be pretty awesome. So I've been getting a lot of crap about my shoes from Clint. And I said, Clint, is there one question that you want me to ask Denny before we get done with this interview? And he really thought long and hard. He said, when can I get a set of 2311 Air Jordans? Not that Denny wears, that I can purchase. And I would appreciate it if you would just give them to me if that's going to happen a couple weeks beforehand so that Clint can't have them. Is that going to ever happen?
Yes, it is going to happen.
It is.
Yes, I just need a shoe size and some patience.
Shoe size and space. Well, I'm a size 10, and we don't need.
I'm a 10 as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, your shoe collection is pretty phenomenal. I think it's definitely pretty fun to see all those shoes. What was the first car that you ever bought and purchased that you drove on the street? And tell me the story around buying that car or who gave it to you.
The first car I bought was a Ford Ranger from my brother, actually. He got it for Christmas 2 or 3 years before I got the hand-me-down, but I bought it from him. And so it was just a Ford Ranger Splash. And I remember the first thing I did was chop it, lower it to the ground, put graphics on it, had a spoiler on the back, 18-inch wheels.
Spoiler?
Yes! Back then, my dream was to be in Mini Truckin' Magazine. That was my dream. And I finally got it at a car show. I got a little picture of my Ford Ranger and I thought I had made it at that point. So that's what I did, is I got my check from Joe Gibbs Racing. It was $10,000 to be their development driver. Well, I took that $10,000, I bought rims for my Ford Ranger, and I bought a plasma TV. And that money was spent in 2 weeks. But I had the nicest lowrider in Chesterfield, Virginia.
So how did it end? Did you sell it, wreck it?
Well, I wrecked it a few times.
A few times.
To age myself, I was reaching down for a CD and ran in the back of a school bus once. So that maybe had to get me my first job, which I worked at Subway, because my dad says, I'm not paying for that. You have to fix it yourself. So I had to go get a job at Subway to repair that Ford Ranger, but I eventually ended up selling it.
That's awesome. Last fun question. Michael Jordan, Joe Gibbs, calling at the same time. Which one are you answering first?
Michael Jordan. Just because he doesn't call as often as Joe does.
That's good.
and Joe's numbers is blocked. He has no caller ID, it says. So I would just say, Joe, I didn't know it was you.
So Michael's number's not blocked?
No, his well, I mean, I have it saved that, but I guess Joe has his number star 67, so where you can't see that it's Joe Gibbs calling.
Michael has to be one of the most pretty normal human beings ever. Last year we were at Bristol, and we had just had an absolutely miserable day, and I'm walking out with my head down, walking down the tunnel, and all of a sudden this big hand just reaches up behind me and grabs my neck. He said, "Boy, you don't have anything to be worried about." And I look back and I'm like, holy shit, that's Michael Jordan. And he grabs my neck and he says, "You've had one hell of a career, son. You need to pick your head up." And he walked me all the way out that tunnel, all the way to the top of the tunnel, and just gave me the biggest pep talk all the way out. By the time I got to the top of the tunnel, I'm like, things are pretty good. So
I can tell you for a fact that Michael Jordan is a Kevin Harvick fan.
That's
no doubt
awesome.
about it.
Don't tell my wife that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. It's definitely my favorite interview that I've ever done as a broadcaster here at NASCAR on Fox. But I want to thank Denny Hamlin for taking the time to sit down with us and give us a whole bunch of one-liners and a lot to wrap our arms around and think about from that interview. So thanks for listening to Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour presented by NASCAR on Fox. We encourage you to follow us on YouTube or anywhere else that you take in your podcasts, and follow us on Harvick Happy Pod anywhere on social media, and we'll be with you next Tuesday. Thanks for listening.